But yeah, guys. So Jeremy and I actually go like way back to like elementary school. And Jeremy, don't take this the wrong way. I hope this doesn't set the interview up on the right tone. But I think if we went back then and you picked Jeremy out of that cohort and said that he was going to be among our most successful like members of that group, um, well, I don't know. I don't know what you'd say. I don't think anybody. I don't think Jeremy
It's
himself.
probably a no.
Yeah, who knows what they'd say? I don't know. But
I don't know if I am very successful, but sure, we'll go with it.
oh, come on. But I think Jeremy himself always had a feeling that he was going to make it happen. So I'm really looking forward to talking about his story, so you guys can learn from it, so I can hear more about it because I haven't really followed up on some of the details as well as I probably should have over the last decade or so. But yeah, so Jeremy, I think the best place to start is for you to just let us know what you're doing now, what your title is, and maybe just give a brief description of what that role entails.
Sure. So currently I'm a director at Scotiabank. I manage essentially supplier relationships and vendor risk. So you can imagine in technology, you can have a whole bunch of vendors that you'd be purchasing products or services from. One could be something like IBM, for instance. We need to purchase computers from them. We need to purchase whatever systems from them, whatever it may be. We make sure that the risk between us and that third party, all of the services that they provide, is low or within our risk appetite. So there's a whole bunch of assessments that go on and everything like that. But essentially, in a nutshell, that is what I'm doing today.
Cool. And I came up with a couple of questions to ask you to kind of dig into the like day-to-day duties of that kind of role. But like the focus of the show typically is your kind of transition from university into the early workplace and then what kind of moves you made since then. So why don't you start us off like from university? I think it was Ryerson Commerce that you were in, and maybe guide us through like how you thought that went for you and then what ended up happening upon graduation from there.
For sure. I think I'll set the stage with saying like everybody's journey is so different. And I learned that, going through my own journey, which was a relatively linear path compared to most people's journeys, which worked for me, but it may not work for other people. So I think everybody has their own journey for one. And everybody navigates their decisions and everything like that differently as they go through that journey. But I guess to go back to your question, which is, where did I all start in university and getting into my career? University for me actually wasn't that great. All my friends, so Dan and Josh and everybody else that went to my high school, they actually went to Laurier, and I wanted to go to Laurier for the same reasons, which all my friends were going there. I wanted to have fun with them, party with them, whatever it may be. Enjoy that experience of university with my friends. But unfortunately, I didn't actually have the grades to get into the university that I wanted to because I knew that I needed to go through a business path. And I think that's where it all started is in high school, what did I actually figure out? Did I want to go through this more sciencey path or did I want to go through this business path? And I think for me, it suited me well for the business path. I think there's a third path, which is more so trades and stuff like that, which I think can be very lucrative in itself as well. And you can be very successful in that as well. But I stuck to my domain within business. And the reason for that was my parents were in business. Two, my sister did the same thing. So I kind of just followed her footsteps, so to speak, and she was older than me. And I just felt like that would lead to success because I really honestly didn't know what I wanted to do. I just so happened, like, because I didn't have the grades to get into many of the universities that I wanted to get into, I was lucky enough to have a mom that ended up showing me Ryerson as a potential candidate as a university to go to. And I think that actually fit my skill set perfectly after graduation. And looking back on it, it made total sense for me. So it ended up working out that, the advice that my parents gave me, and just so happened also that I didn't have many options, that one option actually ended up working out for me. So Ryerson, very practical school. You learn a lot of practical knowledge. It's not very theory based. And I think, I went into this business technology path just because, I knew the industry and technology was really good. And I knew that getting a job out of university would probably be relatively easy if I get into technology of some sort. So that's kind of where I stuck to that path in university. But I almost failed out. I failed out almost in second year university. And then from there, I took a summer course, and that summer course led me to getting back reinstated because I was on suspension during that summer. I got reinstated at full health, I guess, or whatever it's called today in my program. And then from that point on, I knew there was one thing only, that I knew I needed a university education to be successful, and I knew I wanted to be successful. So I knew that was number one. I knew I needed an education. And number two, I wanted to get out of school as quickly as possible because I hated it. I didn't really like school. I didn't like learning. It just wasn't me. So what I did was finish school as quickly as possible. That was my goal. So I ended up loading all my courses up, and I ended up finishing within 4 years. And just to provide a little bit more context to that, when I started university, I was actually only taking like four courses in my first year per semester. So I was like, I'll finish in 5 years. It's not going to make a difference. Once that point hit, and that was a pivotal moment in my life, I just said, you know what, forget this. I know I need to get done, and I know I want to get back into the workforce. So let's just get it done, and let's load up my courses, and let's figure out how I can just get to that path. And that was my, I guess, light switch moment that really changed, I guess, my career into a different perspective.
Nice. And Dan, maybe we can come back to the course selection, because I know when we had our conversation, just you and I talked about like Jeremy and I were basically in the same boat there, except I accepted an offer from Laurier that was just whatever program they would throw at me so I could go to the same school as my friends. So we were definitely not thinking much differently there. And I do want to qualify and say we still had fun because you would but yeah, like I think I don't know. I don't have much of a memory of that process. Like I think I kind of winged it. My parents had never really gone through it before, so they just said apply to whatever and then like make your decision from there. Dan, I don't know. Have you talked to any students about that experience and like what they should be kind of considering at that point, or is that like on your radar at all?
I mean, sorry, I guess in terms of like what the process should be like or what they should be thinking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, not particularly just yet. I mean, a lot of the students I'm talking to are already, I guess, in the university realm, but I think as we're now starting to branch out more into the high school world, I think there's definitely more opportunity to talk about that kind of stuff. And I mean, I think Jeremy kind of hit it on the head there, just saying there's a few certain paths or like more, I guess, obvious paths of where you want to take it, but there's going to be a whole bunch of other reasons to make decisions like, okay, where are your buddies going, or all these other things, which I mean, like I always really feel that I was very lucky to get into Waterloo and even take that path with the value of co-op coming out of it, because I never really thought about that when I made that decision, right? It's like, okay, you're told that Waterloo is a pretty good school, so maybe you should go there. But nobody emphasized that co-op was the real reason to go, right?
Yeah, I went on a tour of Waterloo and I saw some of the residences, and then I went across the street and saw the residences at Laurier, and I was like, why would I go to Waterloo? It wasn't.
Yeah.
So that shows you the level of like consideration I was giving that stuff at the time.
I would say though, co-op is huge. I think my program had co-op as well. Unfortunately, I didn't have the grades to get into it, and I think that's the hard part actually about the transition between high school and university. Honestly, the learning is not very hard. It's the lifestyle. It's just adapting. It's figuring out how to learn, or learning how to learn, more so than anything, which you would then apply to your everyday life and work. Yeah, like what you learn in high school, what you learn in university, typically doesn't transfer to the most part, like that actual theoretical things, at least in business, doesn't transfer over to the workplace. But the foundational capabilities that you learn within university and high school, I think those are what really drive you further, at least, like I said, in business. I think sciences is a little bit different because, it's very theoretical knowledge that you need to know.
Yeah, I think it definitely is related to like what the outcome or like path that you're kind of looking to follow afterwards. But just to right on your point on the learning stuff, I was just reading something earlier about so I do course design as part of my job now because we have a lot of people who've been in the business for 10 plus 20 plus years, and we have a lot of people who have just come into the business, but we don't have a lot of in between people. So what we're trying to do is get all of the knowledge that those people who are very experienced have documented or like down somewhere before they just, because if they retire and they just take everything in their head with them and it's not written down anywhere, that doesn't leave a lot of steps for the new people to kind of follow up on. But something I was reading related to that was how your learning style when you're a child and when you're adult kind of shifts, because you go through this tumultuous teenage period where you have a lot of other competitive factors coming into your life, and you're not really able to express your curiosity as thoroughly as you were when you were a child. And you get to the point where, like you said, you're learning only what you need to learn to get to your endpoint. It's no longer about, I'm interested in this, I'm going to like flush it out from beginning to end. It's like, I need to do this to get from point A to point B, and that's what I'm going to do. And we try to take that into account with our course design. Like, people have limited time, they have limited priorities. They're not necessarily thinking about this holistically. Like, they just need to be able to do something at the end of it. And I think that's a pretty interesting educational philosophy. It sounds like, Jeremy, that's how you approach your education in general. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I actually didn't really learn about why education was so important until I actually entered the workforce. And I think that was just through experience and experiencing people and things like that. I think, I look back on my education, I self-assessed and said, what I really took away from my educational experience was experiences in itself, experiences on how to learn, experiences with connecting with people, building friendships, all of those types of things all apply in the workforce, and how you interact with people, in how you learn new tasks or activities or processes or whatever it may be. All of those foundational capabilities are so important and fundamental. And it's more so not what I learned, like I said, but how I learned it. And that's what I realized kind of, I guess, as I went through my experience at Scotiabank.
Cool. Yeah. So let's pick up on that entry into the workforce, unless you wanted to make a comment there, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I was just kind of piggyback on the learning to learn comment there, just because, I find it impressive that you were able to learn that through university, because I realized like maybe a couple of years ago that I never learned that. I could do all this stuff or like took all these courses, but I didn't actually learn how to learn. I learned how to study for tests and pass tests. That's what I learned in university. So, I mean, it's nice to hear that people actually, or like yourself actually was able to learn how to learn through that whole process.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I'd echo that point about tests and stuff that you said. Like, I think a lot of people just focus on, how do you get an A in a course or whatever it may be. I mean, the grade at the end of the day doesn't really matter. Obviously, it may matter for some reasons, like co-op or whatever it may be. But when you look back on your experience, it's your full experience in university that you have to take in totality, and all of the learnings that you get from that experience.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, just coming to the entry into the workforce. So maybe you can walk us through, like, okay, you took the summer course that like reinvigorated you. You finished your degree in 4 years. Did you have something set up coming out of that, or were you just kind of like exhaling, like, I made it, now I'll start thinking about the next step?
Yeah, a good question. So I think how it actually worked out for me, and I'll go back to my first statement where I had a very linear path, which was nice and it was easy, I guess, maybe compared to most people. I was fortunate enough to get a student position. So I wasn't in co-op, but I was fortunate enough to get a student position at Scotiabank in the same year that I failed out, actually. So, or got suspended from university. So that summer, my second summer, I ended up working for Scotiabank. And then I actually had another pivotal moment there too. I had 2 job opportunities, which I got both of the jobs. So the first job was actually becoming an ice truck driver, which was delivering ice to gas stations and all that type of stuff, filling up all those ice containers and whatever it may be, which paid a lot of money. And in my previous summer, I was working for Ford, which I worked with you, and I think you spoke about it in your previous session. But yeah, no, Ford paid unbelievable money too. So I was coming off this more trade manufacturing type of job or role, and I saw the money more so than anything else, and I actually wanted to choose that job just because of the money, and I knew how good the money was. But then, my parents, again, I was lucky enough to have parents that basically slapped me in the face and said, don't be a truck driver, go work for Scotiabank, even if it's shit and it's lower money or whatever it may be. And that first summer I did that. And it just so happened that it also aligned because I got suspended from university, and I got to do a summer course during my time at Scotiabank. So I was able to get a really good mark and get back into university. So that helped too. And then, I took it from there. So then after that, and I had that pivotal moment saying, you know what, I want to finish university. I talked to my boss. I didn't really do much that summer, honestly, at work. I was just a student that walked around and pretty much was not assigned much or did much tasks or anything like that. It was the old banking way where you just hire students for the sake of hiring students. But yeah, no, I talked to my boss afterwards, and she ended up getting me a job in the downtown office imaging computers while I was in university. So I got to work part-time during school, and that's kind of how my, career started. But it wasn't easy because once I got it out of university or graduated university, I was still doing that job where I was imaging computers for capital markets, all that type of stuff, which was very much a processing job, which was very similar to working in manufacturing, so to speak, just more on the technology side. And then I just kept applying to roles. I went through many interviews across the industry. I actually had like 7 interviews with Hoop Health, Ontario Health, whatever. Anyways, some type of benefits. Hoop. It's called Hoop, I think. But yeah, no, I had 7 interviews with them and didn't get the job, so it was discouraging. It was hard, and I wasn't even getting jobs in Scotiabank itself. So I was fortunate enough to carry on my student position as a casual employee, working kind of full time because they needed me, which they were paying me the casual employment salary, which was whatever dollars per hour at that time, and I would just work hourly, but I got to get full-time hours. And then my boss allowed me to do that until I found a job, and it took me about 8 months to find a job, and I ended up finding a contract position in Scotiabank to be a business analyst. And then my career kind of took off from there. I think I started as a business analyst. I wasn't doing much in my first role as a contractor, but then I raised my hand for an initiative, a change initiative, which was called Michelangelo at the bank at the time, which was a lean initiative. And because they needed to give up a resource, they ended up giving up me, and I ended up getting full time out of that. And I think that's where my career really took off, because I got trained by McKinsey. I ended up working for a very high-level program at Scotiabank in lean management with very high executives and things like that had a huge pulse at the bank at the time. And through that, I ended up getting more positions from there on.
Cool. And it's funny, like you said that your course was linear, but it's linear in the sense that when you look at it in retrospect, there's like a straight path, but I'm sure in the moment it felt very scattered and like jarring.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It felt totally, it felt like at some points I felt like I wasn't going to get a job, or at some points, maybe it was going to take a lot longer, or maybe I had to switch industries. I think the benefit back then was I was in a bank, and there's a lot of positions at a bank in a big corporation. So back then it was relatively okay. I was in an okay position. I was still earning money, so that wasn't too big of a deal. But yeah, no, it definitely felt very squiggly at those times. Yeah. But I think if you were to look at wholesome, you'd see I'm very happy with the fact that I've been able to take on every single role that I've been given, and make the most out of it. And that has led to new opportunities, which I think has been awesome. I will touch on one point. I think the difference is, and if I were to look at like a summary of my life or my career history all the way back from university to now, I think there was specific pivotal moments, and I'll call them like light switch moments, where I was just like, oh, aha, that's what I need to do. And those pivotal moments were basically what contributed to my success at Scotiabank. And I will continue to look for those pivotal moments in the future. So I don't want to, I guess what I'm trying to say is, to the audience or to everyone or whatever it may be, I think you should take a step back and really, put yourself out there in any situation as much as possible, because you don't know when that aha moment's going to come, and you'll only see it once it's actually come and gone, type of thing. But I think it's really important in everybody's life. And I think, Josh, I think you had, potential pivotal moment that you were speaking about too, recently, or in your career as well, that you're just like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. Maybe I should do something else, type of thing. And that's led you down the career path that you're today. And maybe it will lead to more stuff into the future.
Yeah, it's so important. Sorry, Dan, I have to go off on this because this is a big thing for me. But yeah, I've had these moments in my life a few times, and I feel actually like maybe counterintuitively, like the older I've gotten and the more I've kind of waded out into those areas of knowledge that I didn't really know anything about before, the more often I have those events. It's like the doubling time on when I think I am an idiot, like, is very fast. Like, I feel like I know something, and then like a month later I realize, no, a month ago I was an idiot. And then like 30 or 20 days after that, nope, still an idiot. And like it just shrinks and shrinks. Now I'm an idiot every day almost. But I remember sitting in university, and this actually resonates with something that Dan and I have been talking about recently, about like, it's not necessarily that the light switches on and you're like, oh, I should have known this before, and now there's some fact that I know now that changes my perception of things. It's something deeper than that. Like, so I was in a class in university, and this guy, it was like a throwaway philosophy class, and this guy was reading this essay, and the essay was about like how to contemplate your death or something. And it was literally like an existential, like, out of body moment, because he read this passage, and it was about how like at some point the buck stops with you. Like the world is going to throw a million things at you, and some of them are your fault and some of them are not, but like eventually you're going to have to make a decision, and you're the one making the decision. Like, you're responsible for it. And the way we've talked about university up till now, you can kind of see how we dodge the responsibility. And it wasn't until that class that I was like, you know what, like this, like that's totally true, and this is it, and like this is the moment. And I'm pretty sure I like floated out of my chair a little bit for a sec. Like, it was, and it really changed every perception I had of everything going forward. Dan, I don't know if you have any of those of your own to share, but Jeremy, we're gonna have to push you on some specifics too, I think.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I probably have too many, and I like to call them TSN turning points. But,
yes, yeah.
But yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I like Jeremy's point there about just like taking advantage of opportunities, right? I mean, I think that's one of the things I like to push as well. Is just, I think you recognized, obviously, maybe with some guidance from your parents or whatever, that you had multiple opportunities there, and you need to make a decision about picking one. But even I guess the question I was going to go back to you on was, what was your thought process? Because I mean, obviously we've been talking about this linear / squiggly kind of pathway, but obviously in hindsight it looks reasonable, or it looks like it makes sense. But in the moment, like, what was your thought process? Even like maybe 6 months into, like you said, 8 months was when you actually got the contract position. But as you're like 3 months, 6 months into not having something, like, what are you thinking about? It was, if you can remember back to then when you were starting to make other decisions, or like, were you constantly looking for opportunities, or did you just kind of think, okay, maybe I'm on the right track, I just got to keep going, keep pushing, and eventually something will happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thinking back to then and answering this, I would say, I think what I looked at specifically was, what is my main goal in life? Like, what do I want? What do I want out of my career? What do I want my end result to be? And for myself, and I probably shouldn't say this on camera, but whatever, I'll say it. There's always to be money and success. Like I just wanted to have that in my life. I think they were really important things for me. And I know maybe not a lot of people say that or give the advice that you should look for money or you should look for that type of stuff. But I think to each their own. I think if money is something that is important to you and because it gets you a certain type of lifestyle, then you should go for it. It doesn't matter. Now, having said that, you have to do it in a very smart way. But I think with that, the outcome would be money. What I started to learn is, how do I get money? And that means you have to grow, and you have to figure out, how do you grow? You have to figure out all of the people that are around you that actually create your growth, and also the experiences that you have that creates your growth. And the only way to really do that is by putting up your hand and doing stuff about it, and saying, you know what, I need to get to this end result. How do I get to that end result? You have to take step A, B, and C, which may mean you might have to change your job, or you might need to look for a new career, or you might need to double down in your current career, or you may need a mentor, or you may need somebody to really take you through a certain path, or maybe give you feedback and look at things in a different way. All of those types of things are things that I think I thought about when I was going throughout my career. I said, you know what, this is my end goal. If this looks like a potential good opportunity with potential high growth in, then let's put up my hand and let's try to get it. And that's what I essentially would do. And I think for the most part, for most of my decisions, that's how I basically base my decisions on.
Yeah, and the other part of that, your kind of previous story that you were talking about, I think the putting up your hand like resonated with me. And then the other thing you mentioned was that the department that you ended up in had like a strong pulse within the company. And I think that's another kind of circumstantial factor that people don't necessarily take into account. Like if you move yourself, even a lateral position, into a domain that you're not necessarily the most comfortable with, but where you have the ear of someone who's making important decisions, or your work can maybe have an impact that stretches out to a different space in the company because you're now a part of that network. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that and link it to the mentoring that you just mentioned too.
I'll start off with saying, I think, one of my mentors and somebody that I really respect and probably has gotten me to where I am today, where I've had, potential very big ups with and some downs with as well. He told me there was 3 things to success. One is, how much grit do you actually have? How much can you process work? What is your capability, skill level? And then thirdly, just your circumstance and really luck when it comes down to you. So, and that third thing is really putting yourself into the right situations at the right time. Look, no one's going to tell you that something is going to be the next biggest thing. You have to go out and search and figure out what could potentially be the next greatest thing, or are you going to fit into that and make it the next greatest thing? I was lucky enough to put my hand up for something, and that just happened to be something that was looked at very highly at the bank. And that opened up doors and opportunities for me. But it's not to say that if I were to do it anywhere else or into something different, that the same outcome wouldn't have happened. Actually, what got me my next role after that one thing, once I got full time, was I was actually with the group or with my team. And one day, what got me the lean management role was I was in a Christmas party. And at that Christmas party, I was actually at the bar. And there was a senior vice president there. And all I did was I turned to him. I had a beer in my hand, and I was with another guy, and we were being very quiet and reserved at the bar because we didn't really know what to do during a Christmas party. We were young, whatever it may be. But I just so happened to turn to the SVP, and I asked him, how did you actually get to where you are? What did you do? And he turned to me. He literally just he laughed. He laughed at me. And what did he basically said, he's just like, look, it's just a bunch of luck. It's a bunch of but he's like, book a meeting with me tomorrow and we can talk about stuff. And I was just like, so I just happened to turn around, talk to a person that is so, open to listening to young people at the time. And he ended up taking a meeting with me, and that ended up getting me a job. And then it so happened, once I was done with that position, he actually introduced me to my mentor. And then my mentor built me up and took me across multiple roles at Scotiabank. And then, I ended up where I am today. So I think going back to your question, because I might have strayed a little bit, but
right on point.
Going back to your question, essentially, it's not about, making sure that you're looking or getting the greatest moments or getting the greatest roles or whatever it may be. It's really the people that you connect with and what you make out of those roles and what you make out of your skill set, your self-awareness, and all that type of stuff, and your growth, and how you take accountability for your own growth that actually gets you to the next role and to the next role. You could have a really shitty role, but if you impress a whole bunch of people, you will get more roles. People will want to hire you.
And you mean beyond skills, right? You mean like...
Yeah, I think all encompassing, I think. And again, it also depends on what you want. You have to take, I think everybody needs to take a step back and look at their career. Some people may enjoy working as an individual contributor, working on things by themselves, not leading people, but they may be very good at it. Some people may want to process for the rest of their life, and that may make them happy. Some people want to be leaders. Some people want to strive for probably bigger positions or whatever it may be. I think you gotta take a step back and figure out, what do you actually want to do? Do you want to be that executive, or do you want to be that person that supports an executive, whatever it may be? I think that's really important for everybody's career, because not everybody is one and the same. And even actually hiring now for people that are working for me, I know that too. I think not everybody's going to be a Jeremy working for myself. Some people might want to do, stick in their domain. They might be subject matter experts, and they may do stuff really well, but they may not do other things well, but they might be really good at that one thing. So that's why, building a diverse team and knowing all of those types of things, there's always a place for somebody. It's just figuring out where you best fit.
Yeah, I was going to jump in there. So, yeah, if we can relate it back to, I guess, your role kind of specifically, do you find that you started off in like one of those categories of roles at the beginning and it's evolved, or have you always kind of just stuck with where you wanted to be from the start?
Yeah, I think for myself, I think I continuously pushed leadership, where I wasn't always like a leader leading people. Actually, I was never a leader leading people personally. It's just the roles didn't pan out to be that way. But I think what I learned is that I was able to lead in different ways, and I was able to lead my peers, my stakeholders, whatever it may be, which got me to where I wanted to get to. But yeah, no, I always wanted to be a leader. So I always pushed that domain. And I've been successful, I think, in that domain as well. So yeah, so I think I've always had that mindset. It's not something that I kind of just grew into. I think it's always been kind of there for me.
Nice. The way you're articulating this is like resonating with my own thoughts about my own career. Now I want to go leave and write things down. You can tell, actually, like you mentioned the sitting back and reflecting a couple of times. And I think that's one thing that you and Dan from our last session have in common, is that you clearly have both thought about this enough that you're able to just articulate it on the spot very clearly. And that's definitely a skill. It's a skill I've definitely come to appreciate over time. In the past, I might have called it like some kind of bullshit thing, but I really recognize the value of it now. So Jeremy, what is a portfolio manager in terms of, like, when I think of managing portfolios, I think investing, but your portfolio is a portfolio of projects. So I'm sure there's some relationship in terms of what the outcomes you're looking for are, but curious to hear you say what those are.
Yeah, so my previous role to this role was portfolio management, and what I was doing there was I was managing a portfolio of projects for the chief technology officer for the bank. So essentially, you can imagine there was a pool of funds, and that pool of funds would get distributed across the technology organization for those technology teams to basically use to invest back into their company or into Scotiabank. So that could be, creating a new data center, or merging data centers, or there could be, modernizing our platforms, whatever it may be. It could be, implementing cybersecurity measures to make sure we don't get hacked. In the simplicity of things, that's essentially what people would do. What that role entailed specifically was really end to end. If a project manager or a team wanted to invest into Scotiabank using technology, they would need to, one, prioritize their initiatives, understand their funding asks, whatever it may be able to present what that investment would entail and the benefits to that investment. They would need to then, once they got funding for that investment, they would need to manage that project from end to end. That means from all the way from the start of the project to implementation of the project, and then finally really closing the project off and learning from whatever you did, so that when you go and implement a new project or a new initiative, you'd be able to learn from it and do better, type of thing. So what we did as a shop is we put a framework and a governance model around that, to make sure that all of our technology areas and their project managers were all taking a standard approach to managing projects, and that whole entire life cycle. So that's kind of like, in a nutshell, what we did.
Okay. And what kind of controls are you kind of looking for to make sure things are staying on track? Or I guess that probably goes down to the project manager level. But
yeah, like I think the controls were essentially like things like, is our financials okay from a portfolio level? Are we on budget? Some things would be, are we on time, like schedule? Are we on cost? Are we on scope? Are we on, are we going to achieve our benefits? Are we on track to achieve our benefits? Those would be some type of metrics and controls that we would ensure that we were measuring to make sure that this investment wasn't going to fail or isn't going to fail.
Gotcha. And just a final question on that. How much of that is relationships?
I think it was a lot of relationships. It's a lot of data. It was a lot of data analysis. It was a lot of, making sure governance, process, all of that type of stuff. But I think we needed to have really good relationships. So you can imagine we were sitting at the top, where we own the entire portfolio. But then there's multiple segments within technology that are owned by different senior vice presidents. And every single one of those units in technology, they would need to act the same and make sure that they were abiding by a standard process. Now, each unit, they could have different things. They're doing different projects. They're doing whatever it may be. So that relationship with those units was really important, for sure. To make sure that you were getting the information, or you were allowing them or building them up to make sure that they can self-serve and provide really good information, because all of that information was rolling up to us at the top of the house, who needed to present that to the CTO as well as all the SVPs to say, you know what, our portfolio is doing well. So I think that was, like, in a nutshell, relationships were, really, really important.
Yeah. Dan, anything else from you? I can keep going.
I was gonna relate it back to just questions about school, I guess, in terms of like all these concepts and things that you're talking about now. Did you learn any of these in school, or like have some background from that helped you like build on this, or was it pure like learn on the job? Once you get into it, you figure stuff out from there?
Yeah, especially technology. I was going to ask the same question. Like, what have you had to brush up on to keep going?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was like crazy amounts of technology learning, like learning technology, because we weren't there. We weren't programmers. We weren't anything like that. But I think I'll go back to I think I spoke about this when I was talking about university. It was the fundamental things that I learned in university, and those fundamental skill sets are what can truly apply to my role, or my previous role, and even to my role today. And those fundamental capabilities was really understanding a process, understanding how to build a project or finish a project. What goes into that? There's hard work. You have to understand a concept maybe from scratch. You may get a case study at school. You may need to read a case study. You may need to understand all the components in that case study, and then you need to build something out of it. So the fundamentals behind that, it wasn't the technical skill sets that you get from that case study, but it was the fundamental skill sets on what was your process of thinking and how did you problem solve through that initiative or whatever it may be, and did you get a good end result, and what was your end result, and how did you display that end result to your stakeholders, which in university would be, your professor or your peers or whatever it may be. So all of that type of stuff, that end-to-end fundamental process, I think definitely it helps me every single day. I'll give you one course specifically. We had to do presentations it was like a presentations course in university, and we'd have to make a presentation every single week because the professor would randomly call on you to lecture in front of everybody. So you don't know whether you're going to get called on or not. And this is not like a small classroom type of thing. This is a full lecture hall full of people. So you had to, if you didn't have your presentation ready, you'd get a 0. And you'd have to be on your game every single week because you'd have to present in front of a couple hundred people. So I think that really resonated with me because I guess, all I do is build presentations. You build decks, you try to explain certain points. And I think that really helped me out. While I wasn't really good at it probably in university or nowhere close to as good as I am now, but the fundamental skill sets of understanding what to do definitely helped me for the future.
Wish I could say I could echo that from university. I learned a lot of that kind of stuff, presentations and stuff from being in the workplace. Like we didn't really have a lot of presentation stuff. So all that kind of stuff I learned on the job.
Yeah. And like I said, every university program is different. I was lucky enough, I think Ryerson was really good from that perspective, where it's very practical and not theoretical, where we weren't doing math tests and stuff every single day. We were actually doing practical things, which I think fully helped me out because I'm a practical learner. I'm not a theoretical learner. I'm not a bookworm by any means. So to me, that really helped me out.
I feel personally attacked, but that's okay. So the last few questions I think I have before we wrap up and maybe open for questions from the audience are just about your position as a hirer or as an employer. So you kind of mentioned how you fill out your team now. I heard rumors that you have kind of an interesting interview question that you like to ask, but I wanted to ask you, and for our crowd, what are you looking for in general? Is it just best fit? Is it a skill set? Are there certain necessities? And what should they be kind of presenting at the front of their resumes to get eyes on them as candidates?
We'll start with the interview. We'll start with the interview question. So yeah, I do typically ask a fun interview question right now, and I think that might dovetail into the rest of the questions. The question that I ask is the room that you're sitting in right now, if I were to ask you to fill it up with tennis balls, how would you go about doing that? And I'll give you 2 criteria. One is the room must be filled, and 2, you must have minimal to no leftover tennis balls remaining or whatever it may be. And essentially what I'm looking for there is how do you problem solve to get to your answer? And you'll imagine that, really senior staff, so senior managers, because that's who I'm interviewing right now, they have very funny answers to that. Some people will say they'll get a machine and they'll pump the tennis balls in and then they'll figure it out, and then they'll fill in gaps with cutting tennis balls and stuff like that. I've actually gotten answers like that, which is okay. It shows that some people are more creative, where there are more people that are very analytical and much more of a problem solver, which is what I was looking for. And the right answer, or the more right answer, is that you look at what is the volume of a tennis ball, what's the area of your room or volume of your room, and you figure out how many tennis balls you need, and then you go and purchase the amount of tennis balls, and then you put them into the room type of thing. So that's kind of what I was looking for, just their process and their thought process behind how do you solve the problem. So I think that goes into what am I looking for? When I look for people, I look for, again, foundational capabilities, whether they are good with people, whether they will fit within the team. So like I was saying before, not every single person that you're looking for needs to be, a star candidate wanting a director role or wanting to get a promotion or whatever it may be. You may need people that sit in a domain that can be subject matter experts, and they're okay with that. They're fine with that. So that might be one thing. So looking for a diverse skill set that can cover all of my bases. So one person that I was looking for was more on the analytics side, where I don't really need to be part of analytics, but I need to be connected in with analytics. So I want somebody that is maybe more of an engineering background that can do some of the work, but also can provide that linkage to data analytics. I may want somebody right now that is more so, a subject matter expert, and my position has changed, so it's not portfolio management anymore, but it's supplier risk. So it might be somebody that's in that domain that is just really good at identifying or working with people to identify the risk of a certain contract. So I'm looking for all of those puzzle pieces to fit together to make one wholesome puzzle that will just work cohesively together. So that's kind of what I look for. So it's very different based on the individual, but it all fits together into one, I guess, strategic goal overall. And then finally, I think your last question is, what would I say for people to put in their resumes and stuff like that? I think that was your last question, right? Mm-hmm. I would say, it's difficult being, a student trying to get into the workforce. I can empathize with that significantly, because one, you may not have a lot of stuff on your resume or whatever it may be. I think the one thing that I'll emphasize is, one, putting stuff that shows those foundational capabilities, that you can problem solve, that you can go out and learn different things, that you can, that you've shown and you can demonstrate that you've did something that it showed improvement, and that you've been able to move the dial in something. All of those types of things will go well with some managers, but I'll also like to emphasize that every manager is different. Every director that you find is going to be different. I would look for some more, I guess, soft skill type of things to bring into my organization, because I weight soft skills higher than technical skills, but other managers might weight technical skills over soft skills. So I think you got to figure out, you got to build your network, you got to collaborate with people, you got to build and actually I'll backtrack on building your network. I think you actually have to build connections, not your network, but connections with just people. Go out, talk to people, understand where you can fit in. Once you get your first role, look at just continuously building those foundational capabilities, because that will take you much further than having a hard skill set. Programming today in certain languages is going to for sure change tomorrow. Building Power BI or Tableau dashboards or whatever it may be, it's going to change tomorrow. But understanding how to read data, look at data, build processes, all of that type of stuff, those are things that will stay forever, because they're foundational things that you need to learn, and that will cross over with whatever tool or whatever thing that you're trying to learn, or on top of that. So I think the foundational capabilities, I'll keep hinting at that is really important to me.
Yeah. Well, we'll let you boys get back to your decks in a sec. Jeremy, the last question I had for you was, do you have to take the tennis balls out of the packages to fill the room? Because this started a big kerfuffle in my household. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, you could do whatever you want. If you want to
staying
mess
in
with
the
the
box,
size,
I'm not hiring that person. If it stays in the box, that's an unfinished project.
Fair enough.
Anyway, we appreciate you coming on.
I would have accepted the answer though, if you measured the size of the containers.
Okay, well, thanks. Now I lose that argument. But yeah, no, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your time with us, and I hope the audience gets a lot out of this talk.